Without further ado, I'm going to introduce Anne Marie with 210 Analytics.
Mike's up. All right, good morning all. And as Hillary mentioned, it is year 10, which is quite amazing. If you think about it, we started far before the pandemic hit us and really changed our lives and are still changing our lives. And the beauty of long-term trend lines is that we don't need to ask people, how did you used to behave, but we're able to see it in the numbers. So we interview 1,500 consumers about anything and everything regarding produce, where they buy it, what they like, what they consume it for, what they do with it. And of course, we rotate in a bunch of new topics as well, and social media is a fun one this year. Also know that a lot of consumers will believe that they buy one way. They truly do, especially in the areas of organic and sustainability. So we always need to make sure we keep them honest and we overlay what consumers tell us with the actual sales numbers, and those are provided by Circana. So the full report includes a ton of information, and here you see the chapter titles. Now, I would need about 2 hours to go through all of that, and that would be mightily boring. Plus, we have an amazing expert panel here. So we pick and choose a lot of the topics that we thought were the most pertinent to the group today, but be sure to download the full report. We're going to give you a slide with a discount code at the very end, so you're able to download all that. The deck will be made available. Feel free to take pictures, but you can always email myself or Rick to get a copy of the slides as well. So I'm going to kick it over to Rick. He is the Vice President of Fresh for the Food Marketing Institute, to do a quick intro of our experts.
Great, thanks Anne-Marie. Very excited to be back here again. One of my favorite conferences, because I love talking produce. I have a great panel today. I'll start off with Josh. Josh is the Senior Vice President of Category Management of Produce at US Foods. He's been with them for 12 years in a variety of roles, including managing the Chef Store division. Prior to US Foods, Josh held a variety of roles at Safeway. I actually worked with him at Safeway Corporate, including the VP of Produce Business Unit, Corporate Pricing and Supply Chain. Welcome, Josh. Also with us today is Laura Hines. She is Walmart's Vice President of Global Produce Sourcing and has led the produce merchandising in her 12-year tenure with the company. Laura has a deep background in fresh produce industry. Prior to joining Walmart, Laura worked for a variety of growers, shippers, including Dole, Driscoll's, and Chiquita. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you. Yay, Laura.
And last but not least is Jim Thomas. He joins us from Sweetgreen, where he serves as the Vice President of Supply Chain and Sustainability. In case you're unfamiliar with Sweetgreen, it's a fast casual restaurant chain that specializes in salads and bowls using fresh, organic, and sustainable ingredients sourced from local farmers. Sweetgreen was founded in 2006 and has 211 locations. Prior to joining Sweetgreen, Jim was also at positions at Panda Restaurant Group and various boards. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you.
All right, Anne-Marie, they're dying for the information, so let's go.
Let's go. Something is echoing badly. Sorry about that. Let's all start with, of course, the performance, because that gets us all on the same page to understand where the big trends are that are going to shape tomorrow. So, of course, our world is about inflation, as is the consumer world. So what does that look like? Well, we can look at the percentages, and if we look at the percentage year over year, we're looking at about 1.7% if you think about all the food and beverages in that Circana universe. In any other year, 1.7% isn't all that bad. In fact, we take it probably. But it is really the cumulative impact. If you're looking at that 12% and another 6% and another et cetera, and the best way to look at it is if you look at the actual absolute price across all food and beverage of $3.13 in 2019, that is now $4.22 in 2024. Needless to say, that led to a long list of changes among consumer behavior, and that affected food service and retail just about equally. A lot of people recognize that when you make food at home, it tends to be a little bit cheaper. So we're seeing a contraction into a more home-centric environment. But at the same time, that did not mean retail spending was freely. There was a lot of changes there too. More than 8 in 10 consumers said they changed how they approached grocery shopping as well. Looking at that across all the different temperature stages in produce, you see that yes, we had some tiny little bit inflation in produce this year, almost flat prices at 0.2%, but over the last couple of years, we had some of that upward pressure as well, though not quite the way we see in total food and beverages. When we compare that to what has happened in frozen had huge inflation in 23. Prices came down in 24. They were up only 0.7%, and we continue to see that inflationary pressure in canned and shelf stable as well. And yet, even though fresh produce did not have the inflation seen in the total store or seen in other areas of produce across the store, we continue to see that consumer believing that fresh is expensive. I don't know if we'll ever lose that reputation, Rick, but it is something to work against. How can we make sure that people understand that it is not all about price, it is about value, and really reduce that waste? Because I think waste is a big component as to that price perception at home. But all that meant that those meals came into the home, and that meant a lot more growth for both ingredients of meals, so meat, produce, dairy, all of them grew rapidly in units. But we also saw great strength for deli prepared and deli cheeses. So across the store, really the only department where we saw some pressure was seafood, which has a very premium kind of positioning, but everything else grew, and produce was one of the strongest leaders in that whole area. What's behind that? Every year I stand up here and I talk about you can grow any brand, any category, any store really 3 different ways. And that is you can get more people to buy, you can get them to come to your store more often, and you can get them to spend a little bit more. Well, in the case of produce, we did a lot of that. We saw for the first time in a few years that people were shopping a whole lot more, an increase of 3% in trips. And we all know how amazing produce is in impulse purchases and getting people to convert into the produce department when they come to the store. A lot of that has to do with consumers looking for what's on sale and going to different stores to chase sales promotions, and we are capitalizing on that. We also just continue to see, though, that consumers balance what they're spending with pulling back a little bit on unit. That's what I hear a lot from retailers, too. Our dollars are looking good, but people just continue to try to spend a little bit less by leveraging how much they buy. All that led to tremendous growth over the last couple of years. If you look at the total dollar sales, we see that beautiful stair step that we like to see of growth. More than $92 billion now in the Circana measured networks, but look at volume as well. That's the one that really excites me. Volume is not just up year over year, it's up over 23, over 22, over 21, and hey, we are almost looking at an equal number to 2020, which we didn't think we could come ever close to. Now, we are seeing a little bit less value added and a little bit more conventional produce being sold, so that might impact pounds, but all in all, this is a fantastic result to see our volume up 3.6% year over year in 2024. Now, some of you might say, that's not the kind of growth I'm seeing. Well, first of all, we're seeing big regional differences, and here you see the volume broken out year over year by region. That has everything to do with the migration patterns that we have seen over the last couple of years. And when you look at the Southeast, if you look at areas like Denver or Phoenix, those have grown tremendously much and have taken dollars with them. So that is one reason why your numbers might be looking a little bit differently. Additionally, we're seeing very different performances by fruit and vegetables. While both grew, we see more strength in fruit, and we also see a higher pound growth than unit growth, so that's where consumers are buying a little bit more, perhaps to use over the course of a week. The other thing is that there was actually deflation in vegetables, so you're not going to see quite that aggressive dollar growth for vegetables like you are for fruit. Now, there were some very exciting growth areas in 2024, and what I really want to call out is that cucumber number. If we think about a mature commodity like cucumbers, how amazing is it to see growth of $164 million additional dollars in cucumbers, and that was due to TikTok. The hashtag cucumber salad caused 4 months of double-digit growth in volume for cucumbers, and I'm talking 15, 16, 17%, and it pulls cucumbers up into the top 3 growth powerhouses of 2024. Berries, too, they're unbelievable. Month after month, we look after berry sales, and they just continue to grow. They added almost $1 billion in 1 year. Think about that opportunity in terms of we bring out the strawberries during Mother's Day, during Valentine's Day. Look at this retailer who says, brighten up your holidays with some berries. Bring berries into other occasions, and we can continue to grow that very powerful berry category. Now, we're also seeing that the sales by channel is very, very different. I mentioned earlier, if you're in a different region, you may not see that overall number. The same is true for the different channels. We're seeing very different performances there. More than anything, people are shopping more stores, and that is more than anything, more mass supercenter, more club stores, more natural and organic. And we're seeing a little bit less focus on dollar stores in this current environment. That has translated into a vastly different distribution of dollars just over the matter of a couple of years. While it's important to point out that traditional supermarkets are still easily the big powerhouse in produce, they have lost a little bit of share if you look at the total dollars spent on produce in 24 divided up by the different channels according to Circana. So you do see a loss of about 3 percentage points. And if you think about that $92 billion category, that is quite a shift of dollars that is going into some of these other channels. Over the last couple of years, the growth channels have been mass supercenter, club, and discount grocery, just like the consumers told us in our survey. So that means how can you differentiate? How can you be that store that people come to make sure that you solidify as much of that planned produce purchase as you can? Well, consumers tell us, yes, in most cases, when you live in urban, suburban, or even small town areas, you probably have the choice of going to the left for one store, going to the right for another store. What makes you decide which one you go to? Freshness beats out price, and that is such a powerful message. At the end of the day, it does come down to taste. It does come down to preventing food waste. But yes, price is in the number 2, so that truly talks to the importance of value, the combination of the ultimate price and the ultimate freshness. Then, of course, your variety, your in-stock performance, your promotions, a lot goes into determining where people go. One last note on online. We saw that being a growth channel as well. That was really driven by the second half of the year where consumers started to pull back very hard on their restaurant spending. But of course, that meant more time having to spend on cooking meals. Life didn't get any less hectic, and that's why we saw such an increase in online sales. So are your commodities bought online? Is your brand in the basket? Have they bought it before? Do you have the right descriptions? As a retailer, you're probably known for produce, but are you equally known for produce online? How can you translate that trust that people have in your store in their online purchase as well? A lot of food for thought, Rick. I'm going to kick it over to you, and let's hear from the experts.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. I can't emphasize enough how much you guys should congratulate each other for driving not only the sales, but the units in 2024. So give yourselves a round of applause. There aren't many, if any, other departments in the supermarket industry that were able to do that last year. So Josh, I'll start with you. Produce was a winner last year, had good retail growth. While 2024, it was a turbulent year in food service, right? How did produce fare from your view as being a distributor to food service locations, both restaurants and institutional, compared to the number you're hearing here?
It was not quite that strong, unfortunately, in terms of leading the pack, but it was on pace with all of the categories. But when you look a little deeper, I mean, there's obviously always more to the story. And what we are seeing is that.
Let's hold on for a second. I want them to bring you a mic because I don't think it's either not turned on or it's not working. He's running up here. That was so good. I want you to repeat it.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah?
That was a damn
Yeah.
good answer, wasn't it?
Yeah. What was let's ask the first two rows. Was that a good answer? Yeah? Okay. All right. So back to your question.
Okay.
We were unfortunately not quite as strong as what in food service as we saw those numbers in retail, where produce was leading the pack. But we were on pace. Certainly not lagging the other categories. But when you look a little deeper, as you always have to really understand more about what's really going on there, what we saw is actually much like in retail. There were items like potatoes and cucumbers and peppers and tomatoes, right? They had really, really strong years in 2024. Interestingly, a category that is kind of lagging others is lettuce, spinach, salad blends, which I think in food service, we've always thought about it as kind of, you got to have that sale to the restaurant to then build your produce program around them. But we're seeing that lag a little bit. So it sort of looks like there's starting to be a shift in what diners are looking for when they go to a restaurant, and then how chefs are making changes in their menu of how they feature produce. Because again, still strong, still on pace with other categories, but we're seeing a little bit of shift in the types of items they're bringing onto the menu.
Interesting. Laura, I'll be really interested in this because we talked about this when we were rehearsing, but I didn't hear your answer. So FMI did a lot of work with consumers last year where we asked them, what is value? And what was interesting, I've always, traditionally thought of value as price and item. But they're coming back and telling us really it's more about, if not more, other factors are convenience, relevance, experiential, and quality. So based on that, how does Walmart approach the equation of value?
First of all, can you hear me? So I don't want to have to repeat myself.
We can hear you now.
You can hear okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thanks. So very similarly to what you just said is the way that we look at a value as well for our customer base. I would start with the assortment. So customers expect to see a broad assortment, but that's both in-store and online. The nice thing about online is it's really limitless, right? And so we're always trying to get more assortment online to give that breadth of assortment. It also has to be relevant. I think you said relevance in there too, so it needs to be customer relevant. Culturally relevant as well. So it needs to be product where and especially as we become more of a multicultural society, and we need to have the product that the customers expect to have, that they can cook at home with their families. In addition to the assortment, then it's also, you talked about price, and we look at price and quality together as that value equation. So you can't, obviously the customers expect low price, but it's got to be good quality. You can't sell something really cheap that people can't eat. So the two of those go together hand in hand. And the interesting thing there, it's really income independent. So low income wants good quality, and high income also wants good price. Everyone is looking for a good value. After that, we look at the experience. And it's really about providing a seamless experience for the customer and how they want to shop. So if they want to shop in-store, online, and it could be pickup or delivery, customers want all choices right now. And convenience is a big piece of that, and I think you mentioned convenience as well. And lastly, it's about trust, and the customers want to be able to trust the retailer where they shop. And what does that mean? That means giving them a good, solid, consistent experience. So it's not up and down, it's consistency. And in addition to that, it's sourcing the right product, but from a sustainable way and from a responsible way as well.
Great.
So that's the way we look at value.
That's great. Jim, berries exploded at retail. So did cucumbers, avocados, onions, peppers. They all had a strong year. Do you see this retail produce trend influence what consumers are looking for at Sweetgreen? Like, I've always thought traditionally the trend starts at the restaurant, moves to retail. How are you seeing this play out? Is it still that way, or are you starting to see it go the other way?
Sweetgreen's a really fascinating business. We are the produce aisle in restaurant space. I imagine that what the produce section in the supermarkets are displaying are the things that our customers are experimenting with in chef preparations. So I think it goes two ways, that the chef-inspired meals, assortments, flavors, builds, give people permission to try things at home that they might not otherwise try. I think we see it, cucumbers is almost hysterical to me. The retailers benefit from a great deal of marketing and the work that the associations do for the product. You would see that in berries, you'd see that in cucumbers, and you benefit from the merchandising. So when the merchandising shows up to inspire the customer to try something new, it gives us permission in our menu to build bowls that might be a little bit more experimental and certainly stay fresh. So we'll, in our business at Sweetgreen, we'll mirror what's happening, I think, in a lot of the supermarkets and grocery aisles and farmers markets to give our customers what they're asking for.
Interesting.
Other restaurants, though, I think we used to see fine dining into casual dining into fast casual. We're certainly chef inspired, and as we find ways to merchandise that and to scale those programs with the food service distributors, I think finding the right combination to support the food service environment's a lot different than the supermarkets in that sense. But it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
And Rick, I would just add, I think Jim's absolutely right. It is a two-way street. I mean, I can tell you, when we're thinking about innovation, we're looking at fine dining, we're looking at kind of the most creative chefs, right? And what are they doing and experimenting with? But we also look to retail a lot to see what is happening there. And a lot of that has to do with the people in this room, quite honestly, and where they're putting their innovation resources, what they're developing to bring to retail, and thinking about how can we translate that to a food service application.
It just reminds me in this industry how we always look at the other. I can't tell you how often I get people telling me, hey, Rick, what is Europe doing? And when I talk to European retailers, they go, what is the US doing? And here I'm hearing you both say, at food service, our retailers are going, what is food service doing? And at food service, you're asking what retail's doing. I have a quick question for you, Laura. So you heard Anne-Marie talk about the TikTok phenomenon of hashtag cucumber salad. Now you operate thousands of stores globally. Can you take something that happens on social media and implement it? How does that work in a big chain like yours?
Yeah, it's not easy because we are big, and I think up to now, and I mean, it's been cucumbers, it's been the cherry tomatoes. You guys remember years back the celery craze that went on forever. I thought it would never end, and it puts a lot of pressure. I mean, it's fantastic for growth in our industry and consumption, and we want that, but it puts a lot of pressure on the whole supply chain, and I know it puts pressure on suppliers as well. So we react to it today, and I think in today's world, we have great teams that look at, forecasting and, try to react to it as they see it coming. But I think where we need to get to, and I'm very hopeful and optimistic that we will, that we can start using technology like Gen AI to actually start predicting these trends so we can get ahead of it. It will help us from a retailer, but I think it will also just help, suppliers as well, so they know what to plant for, and we can all plan this together.
That's so smart, because I think you're right. I think we react, and if we can be proactive and actually start the conversation, I think that's where we have to head. That's very interesting. Anne-Marie, I'm going to turn it back to you.
All right, we have talked quite a bit about that marketplace. If you go back to 2019, about 80% of our destiny was determined by us, by our distribution, by our pricing, by our promotions. Ever since 2019, that external environment has become way more important in how our performance is. So we saw earlier about 4 in 10 consumers say that they are eating out a little bit less, but at the same time, what meal occasion is that? We see that really across all breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks, people pulled back a little bit, though I will say in the last couple of months, as a lot of companies are moving back to come back into the office, the two meal occasions that are starting to come back from food service are breakfast and lunch. So that, of course, prompted Rick and myself to ask the question, if you are preparing more meals at home, what can the produce department do to get fresh produce into those extra meals? Shocker, prices is the #1 answer, but if we put prices aside for a minute, it does come down to having relevant promotions, having meal bundling prices, having some ideation. In other words, there is a lot that we can do to get in front of consumers, help them with meal planning, and help them with shopping to make sure that those extra home occasions have fresh produce included. Additionally, we all know that food service might be down a little bit in trips, but there's still formats like gyms that are doing extremely well. People are continuing to eat out. They're just a little bit more planful, if that's a word, about when they decide to eat out. They're a little bit more planning in what outlet am I going to go to, when am I, so rather than I'm not in the mood to cook or I'm not wanting to spend the money or the effort or I'm out of time and I'm just going to go to a restaurant, it is much more of a planned occasion. So does that mean we can be the +1? Because maybe it's not always about food service versus retail. Maybe it's about food service and retail. And that's what a lot of consumers told us. I might buy a pizza from a restaurant, but add a salad to it or have fruit to it. So you see that 59% of consumers say they do so frequently. So what do? Well, they add a wide variety of produce items to restaurant-bought occasions. So think about that in your merchandising, marketing, and all of a sudden, we always go after that full meal, but could we be the +1 to restaurants as well and truly work together as retail and restaurants? So we're looking at fresh fruit added as a side or an add-on or a dessert. We're looking at fresh veggies, salad or other. We're looking at salad kits that are being added. So this is a big opportunity for us. But as I mentioned earlier, we are not isolated from all that pressure in the marketplace in retail either. 8 in 10 consumers say they make some kind of change. We talked earlier about what drives consumers to one store versus another. Well, look at their price comparison behaviors. About a third looks at prices across at least 2 or more stores. So that means, yes, everybody buys produce. We saw that very high 99% household penetration, but what gets them to buy at your store and buy your brand or your product? 40% say they check prices in the store, and 41% check across different items while they're in the store. But it also means if we remember back that dollar distribution across the different channels, you see that almost 97% of dollars are spent in store. In other words, wowing in store remains crucially important. Earlier we asked, what gets you to go to one store versus another? This question asked, what makes for a great produce department? Freshness, again, beats out price. And I will tell you, I do research across many categories. There aren't many categories where quality and freshness sits above price. Many times it is hand in hand, but price beats out that quality. So that just really tells us how important that is. Many other operational things on there as well. Being in stock, having people available, having bulk as well as packaged, having locally grown, extensive variety. So if anybody ever thought your job was easy, give them this slide because it clearly shows we have to execute on all cylinders, whether that's quality and price, but also variety. But this is really our roadmap to what a consumer considers a great department. We saw the importance of freshness, both in the store selection and what makes a great department. So call that out. How are you securing that freshness in your store? How are you guaranteeing the freshness in your store? Some great pictures here. At the same time, we saw that a lot of people are making changes in total groceries, but also in produce. In this case, it very much matches that fantastic sales performance. And 31% said they are actually buying more fresh produce now versus just 16% who said they're buying less. So that's really where that comes from. Why are they buying less? Well, that has everything to do with cost. But a really important call out there is, as much as we always look at our own prices and our own promotions and our own cost, a big reason, almost equally big reason, is simply the cost of life. Everything has gone up. Our wages have not gone up as much since 2019, and that just means people are in a constant and nonstop balancing act. So as much as we need to control our own destiny, there is a lot to say about that pressure from the outside marketing place. So we came up with all sorts of different promotions that we've seen across the marketplace, anything from one-day promotions, 3 days promotions, happy hours. And what we're seeing is that consumers have an appetite for most of them. But at the same time, this idea of just 1 day or 3 day or a happy hour promotion is not as popular as the ones that are a little bit longer, even though we said the discount was better. So we continue to see a lot of focus on that traditional price off promotion, which we left off the list, but BOGOs continue to be very popular there as well. And we are seeing this in the exact sales numbers. So in this case, what consumers told us was exactly what they are doing as well. A lot of uptick there in that promoted volume, which means anything that was bought while it was on sale, whether that was a BOGO or a markdown, what have you. But we are still not at the promoted levels of 2019. I'd be the last person to tell this audience promote more. I think it's all about being relevant in your promotions. How can you drive a purchase that would have not happened if you did not have that promotion? How can you draw people that have never bought your product because of that promotion and sell it at full retail the rest of your year? So incrementality is incredibly important. Produce remains the #1 item that consumers look for as they're scrolling through the ads and the apps and looking in price comparison. So use that digital leverage that you have in produce to grow the list in terms of your retailer audience, but also that's a great opportunity to get people involved and get that item on the list before people even go to the store. Because one thing is for sure, while there are categories where we're fighting an uphill battle to get people to buy more, consumers want to eat more fresh produce. We see this every single year. And at the same time, we see that only 34% of consumers say that they eat fresh produce just about every day. That leaves 2/3 who are not eating it just about every day. And if we just reduce our hopes down to 4 days a week, we'll set the bar a little lower. We are looking good at 57%, but come on, that is still 43% who are not eating fresh produce more than four or more times a week, so a lot of upside. So we decided to look at who are those people that eat fresh produce every day, or just about every day. What do they do different? Well, it always boils down to this. They eat fresh produce across more meal occasions. So maybe dinner ended up just being a pizza, but they already had their fresh produce for breakfast or for lunch or for a snack. They also buy a wider variety so they don't get tired of the same thing. So that is a really important hint. So make sure that you advertise and you really introduce people to a variety of items. They are planful in their trip. They make a list, but at the same time, if they see a beautiful eye-catching display, they'll grab that as well. They also heavily rely on convenience, knowing that sometimes time is short, but they prioritize fresh produce, and that's what gets the fresh produce item on the list as well. So Rick, again, a lot of food for thought. Back over to you.
Sure is. You know, Anne-Marie, you said hand them that slide. If I was back at retail, I'd be taking that slide to every produce department manager and saying, freshness is #1. Freshness and appearance is #1. That's a very powerful information. Hey, Josh, this was the first time, if not the first, it really resonated in the research, how consumers were saying that they're maybe getting something at a food service establishment, then they're going to retail or in their refrigerator and combining it with fresh fruit or vegetables. So we're seeing that as a real avenue. I'm interested in how food service operators are emphasizing produce. Is the focus on the core item, you know, the center of the plate, as they used to say, or are you finding ways that food service is now trying to emphasize the produce as well?
Yeah, well, unfortunately in this business, we still refer to the protein as the center of the plate.
Unfortunately.
So maybe one day the center of the plate will be thought of as produce. I mean,
Right.
wouldn't that be quite a day? But yeah, I think that, produce is still very much a complement to that core item. I think that's still the case today. But I do think that's starting to change a bit. We're seeing kind of like to the evidence of the growth that I talked about earlier, right, where we're seeing a wider variety of items with strong growth in food service. And I think that just speaks to that restaurants are integrating produce in new ways into the meals that they're preparing. It's not just sort of the traditional, meat and three, right, type of selection. It's much more integrated. And I think, one of the things that we really pay attention to that we think is driving that is generational preferences, right? So Gen Z, for example, right, a lot of purchasing power, they're really setting the standard and the trends for what restaurants need to offer their customers. And Gen Z has a preference for much more plant-forward dishes. And you're seeing that starting to get integrated into restaurants and the things that they put on the menu.
Very interesting. Laura, Anne-Marie explained how the trait of what we call the best customer, the one that eats it daily, is that they incorporate it into more of their meal occasions, especially like breakfast and snacks. How can the produce department address that with those customers that don't eat it as frequently? How do we get them to think about that?
Yeah, I think that's the million-dollar question, is how do we increase the consumption of produce? And I think we're all trying to work on that and in our own ways. I don't think it's just about showing the health benefit, because I think the majority of people understand that eating more produce is healthy for you. I think the question becomes is, do I pick a donut or do I pick, produce to eat? And it's got to start with something that tastes good. So tastes good, price right, good quality. And I would say probably the fourth, which is probably the most important, I think, also is just the convenience item. How convenient is the product? How easy it is for me to buy, to eat, to cook? And I think we have some really good examples in our industry of like snacking tomatoes, which taste really good and are convenient. Easy peel mandarins would be another one. Mini sweet peppers. I mean, there's a lot of things that the industry has created that are very convenient. We need more of things like that. I think to get people to eat more produce. I think about fresh cut veg and fruit, and it's convenient, but I think we need better packaging to be able to get it through to the customer so it arrives with really good quality, and so they want to be able to eat it and they've got shelf life on it to eat it. So I think focusing on the convenient piece will really help. Another piece, and I think about convenience, I think of the way people purchase. And I mentioned before, delivery has become super popular and it's growing, and to be able to just get on your phone, order it, it's in your home, and then you've got it for lunch. I mean, things like that I think we're going to start seeing even more and more. And then, I think it needs to be more accessible too. And I love Sweet Greens, for example. It's accessible for eating more produce.
You're welcome.
Thank you. It's a wonderful restaurant, by the way. And schools is another way, but we need to get good quality in produce into the schools, not just whatever old varieties out there, because the kids need to be eating good quality, so then they start eating, and then they'll develop good habits as well. And then lastly, I really put a plug in for produce prescriptions, because I think that also gets people to eat more, and we need to capitalize on the food as medicine trend and really be able to get produce prescriptions out to more states.
Those are great ideas for increased consumption. Jim, Sweet Green is one of the few food service retailers that are growing. You're growing just like the produce department's growing. And I'm wondering, is that a coincidence, or has Sweet Green had that same success, the produce department at retail? Also, when we chatted about value, we said convenience, experience, quality, and relevancy plays a part in the success. How is that playing out at Sweet Green?
It's a wild time to be at Sweet Green because it's a 17-year-old company that has just got a ton of traction lately. We've built that traction around convenience in a couple of different ways. true story, the restaurant business is location, location, location. And where we've met our customer with our store locations has been a big part of our success. Our competitors are also a big part of our success because we offer a variety for the office worker that's got to eat something for lunch every day, right? And a couple of times a week you can have a produce-centric, really, really good salad. You can get, now we feature a steakhouse chopped salad. If you get hungry for that, you can go to but we have a wide variety of ways for people to experience it. One of the reasons why I think convenience plays into it is also about value. You can go in and pick the combinations of things that you want to eat today, and you're not going to waste any of them. So if you want to put sweet potatoes with radishes and do that with sweet corn on kale, we got that. And you can have a little bit of everything that you want to have in order to pick your diet, which gets to that nutritional component that we were talking about earlier. The hope is that people find variety in produce and food in general is good for you. So our mission is putting good food near people so they get a chance to eat it in a wide variety of places. I think our combination capability in the category gives our customers a big win. And then we put our stores in some of the highest use cases that exist for people that need lunch. Yeah.
And I think this almost goes back to that question I had earlier. I think the trends do kind of coincide at food service first and then play out. You know, Anne-Marie, you said the category grew $23 billion in the last 5 years, you know? And so I think Sweetgreen found a lane, and that's driving not only your business, but I think that's rolling over into the retail's business.
The combinations that you see people like roasted sweet potato, right? You're not going to be able to do that at home and put it on your salad and build yourself something like that. So I think it's an entree point for people to have an experience that's convenient without wasting a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It works really well in that sense.
Yeah. Anne-Marie, let's
All
go to the
right.
next section.
Next section. So we're going to talk a little bit about meals and produce. We brought it up in a number of different ways. But yes, we see that outside marketplace also influencing what people are making. And that means that there's a lot of focus on reducing waste. That starts with what they purchase and where they purchase, and that's probably where that enormous focus on freshness comes from. But at the same time, you're seeing different behaviors at home as well, a focus on doing more with leftovers. What can we do with that in terms of different recipes? I saw a great sign in a retail store the other day that said, hey, if you have some leftover potatoes and other veggies, add an egg and make a frittata, or whatever that thing's called. So there's many different ways in which we can help people create a different meal because we know that they're looking for variety as well. They're looking to reduce food waste. What can you throw in the freezer? A lot of people don't realize that berries and grapes can go in the freezer, and that's how you can prevent food waste. But more than anything, where we're seeing a lot of changes over the last couple of years is where people find their inspiration, and that is a long list. And that means as retailers and as grower shippers, we need to be in many different places at the same time. Now, the interesting thing is when you look at that list, there are big powerhouses like Family and Friends and Routine Meals, even cookbooks remains up there. But the most important thing is this list, overall list, is almost meaningless because there's tremendous differences by generation. If you look at Gen Z and millennials, it is all about digital. It is all about video. It's all about the visual. And as we know, produce is one of the most visually beautiful items sold across the store. So let's make sure we capitalize on that ability to use video and photos in those types of recipes and where people find inspiration. We've talked a little bit about it, but here are the numbers. The power of TikTok is overwhelming. If we look at how many people are active users of all these various social media platforms, it is astounding. If you figure that most of us have seconds when people are deciding what to buy in the grocery store, but people spend more than 2 hours, 2 hours and 17 minutes per day on these platforms, it becomes clear that we need to be there as well and how powerful they are in impacting what people decide to purchase. Have you discovered a new fruit or veg through social media? It might not be something brand new, but new to them, and 36% said yes, but look at the difference between Gen Z and boomers. A huge area of inspiration. Have you figured out a new way of how to prepare something? 47% said yes, and that's where boomers start getting into the game as well. So we followed that up with a question and said, well, what was that? What did you discover that something popped out on social media and you bought it in the store because of it? Dragon fruit, the overwhelming number one. I remember we talked about this back in the fall, and afterwards somebody came up to me and said, hey, I sell dragon fruit and people have been sending me these YouTube videos, and is that actually doing something? Yes. Dragon fruit sales, even though they're smaller, were up 22% in sales. So there is a lot of influence there. We've talked about the cucumber trend and cucumber guy and how much that influenced how people are using different commodities in a different way, now driving new consumption behavior. Watermelon pizza, never heard of it, but that was one of the answers that people gave. Or avocado toast, the Brussels sprouts. We all know that that became a big thing, and especially the Brussels sprouts came very much out of food service. Air fryer bananas, I don't know what it is. One day I will look it up, but we have an opportunity to do the same exact thing in store. People trust random strangers and go to buy dragon fruit. Guess who they trust even more? It's you in the retail store. It's you, grower shippers. So let's make sure that we have recommendations out there as well. This is my favorite fruit. Can a tiny little associate little scribble or something that you put on your social media, or just recipe examples or recipe inspiration in store. That's our way to introduce lesser known fruits and veggies. If you think about mushrooms, for instance, it's all about the whites and browns, but if you look at the heavy mushroom consumer, they buy a lot of specialty. So let's make sure that we talk about what are the tastes and textures of these lesser known varieties, or what kind of grapes are out there. A lot of people think it's green and it's red, but look at that grape guide, much like you have in apples or in pears. We have an opportunity to include new applications. We talked about that quite a bit. Cotton candy grapes, right? Apparently people have so much time that they freeze grapes, melt Jolly Ranchers, dip the frozen grapes into Jolly Ranchers. It's like a multiple hour process, but it was super viral. What did Aldi do? They came out with frozen cotton candy grapes that you can just buy in their freezer aisle. Talking about mushrooms as a meat replacement, and here's what Sprouts did, taking the portobello mushrooms, in very, very short little TikTok, to explain what you can do. So very similar. One retailer has the signage in the store, another is doing a quick TikTok on it. People are looking for all sorts of content on social media, anything from produce on a budget, that's where that price comes back in, but also look at ideas for snacking, for entertaining. Here's one of the videos of a lady making the most beautiful board for a party that she's hosting. Realistically, is mine ever gonna look like that? Probably not. More than likely, I'm gonna go to the store and buy the ready-made tray, but the point is, this is an inspiration for me to serve fruit at my next party, rather than just putting out chips and dip. So this is our opportunity to go across deli and produce and be a lot of inspiration. Because one thing's for sure, we have a lot of power of impulse. Again, we talked about the visual beauty of produce. 85% of shoppers say, Yeah, I go to the store with a loose list in my head, but I can be inspired to buy something that I had not planned to purchase. Number one, eye-catching displays and seasonal items more than anything. So seasonal, of course, can mean items that are in season as well as a season when people become more involved. And those are huge opportunities for us to get people to experiment a little bit more. Eye-catching displays is the very strong number two. The number three is locally grown. That's more important to boomers and older generations, whereas younger are a little bit more focused on things like organic, as we'll see in a minute. Sampling, as hard that is to do, is a great way to get people to try something new and then have a more safe purchase, because that's what it all comes down to. There is a lot of pressure on income, but if people can taste it, know they like it, they know they're not wasting their money. Recipe ideas, secondary displays, that can be an actual display as you just saw, or having the items put together into a meal. It's another great way to get produce into the game. There's a huge rise of cross-merchandising power, and that is executing against the primary holidays, but also the secondary holidays. Displays like game day, having the pineapple right in the ad of Easter that also shows that ham, and gifting is another big one. We know flowers are very important there, but a lot of the European retailers are starting to have more fruit baskets so that people not only get the gift, but are able to eat it as well. Last couple are new items, so make sure you continue to call those out in the ad, online, on the package, product information, and store-wide information. Rick, over to you.
I think I'll start with you on this one. You know, consumers.
I wasn't ready.
You ready? All right. Consumers are finding inspiration in a lot of places. We're seeing it from the routine to YouTube to influencers. How does Sweetgreen play in terms of social media and influencers to develop engagement, or maybe even in menu development?
Sweetgreen has an immense online presence. And if you look at our corporate staff, a giant chunk of our corporate staff is associated with managing our social media presence, much more than I'd ever imagined. And what you see us do around the country are collaborations. So we'll do chef collaborations in different cities on different flavors with different ideas and make those collaborations pretty present in social media. So it's the influencer themselves to helping to develop that collaboration with us. You'll see us use our new loyalty program that you'll want to sign up for. But the loyalty program is going to enable people to use their own social media to share what it is that they're finding inspiration in the food that they're using. So I think for our space, for our customer, it's integral to the relationship. And in the absence of that social media relationship that we use to say top of mind, we're featuring farmers. We're featuring farmers on the boards, and we have what's called a source board in each of our stores that shows the suppliers by product where we're buying the food from. And we use social media to also influence people in understanding where the food comes from. We did a huge push in the fourth quarter of last year with Brussels sprouts, for example, where we took people in the field to look at Will's Brussels sprouts, and huge success for people, not only because it's a great, colorful ad, there's a story to it, and it's an environment that they might not know a lot about. And the social team that makes it fun, involves the guest in it, and I think it's a big part of the draw.
Yeah, it does make it fun, that's for sure. Rory, you know, the produce has the power of impulse like few other departments. Seasonal items, eye-catching displays, and local, you name it. How can growers, shippers, and retailers work together to optimize the pre-plan and the impulse?
Yeah, good question. I think I'll start with just a quote from one of our ex-Walmart CEOs for the U.S. market, Greg Foran, and he used to say that produce was like the first chapter of a book. And I love that analogy because as you think about the first chapter of her book, it's got to be luring, it's got to draw you in, it's got to be engaging, inspiring. And that's what the produce department needs to be. And with the color and quality and freshness and displays and showing seasonality and having the product as a hero, I think we can achieve that. So we need to plan ahead of time, obviously, how we're going to display everything in the produce department, particularly seasonality. So I have an expertise team out there who's working with our suppliers all the time, understanding what's coming, what's the crop size going to look like, what's the quality, and the timing of it. And we work very much hand in hand, and we have to be able to understand and be able to bring the product in and bring it to life in the right timing. And I think one thing that can help us further along in this is technology again. We're looking, quite a few, just kind of understanding the landscape of technology around crop forecasting, and I think that's where this industry can lean in a little bit further as well. So we can really match up demand and supply better. That's going to help us reduce waste. I know you talked about that. That's important. But also really be able to plan what goes into the sales floor at the right time.
I'm going to steal Greg. I love that. It's the first chapter of the book. That's a great line. I'll give him full attribution.
Yes, I always do.
Hey, Josh, how important are attributes like seasonal and local in food service world compared? You see how important it is at retail. And I see it in small operators. If I go to a small family-owned restaurant, I'll see local, seasonal. How about with the larger chains? How do they do that?
Yeah, it is. It's true. Kind of acting on impulse is less prominent, right? You see in the food service business, independent restaurants tend to be a bit more nimble to be able to make those changes. But in larger chains and institutions, healthcare facilities, and such, it's still very important. They're still looking for seasonal items or looking for local items. But I think what that's rooted in for them is really trying to tap into freshness. And getting really high quality fresh product for their customers or who they're serving, and so it really comes down to predictability, right? So we build programs, for example, that at certain times of the year they know we're going to come to them and say, here's what we've got available that we would suggest for you that is at the peak of season or that is local that we have access to. So that they can expect to make those changes in their menus and have enough time to do it. So it's still very, very important to those customers.
Laura, I saved a tough question for you. So you have 10,000 stores globally. How does local work in a global chain?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's 10,000 stores globally, of which 4,500 about is in the United States. And we have 255 million customers weekly that visit our stores globally somehow or interact with us within our channels. So it's a lot of product, and what we are trying to do is develop more of what we call redundancy of supply. We need to make sure that we're always have product for our customer year round. Therefore, we need to source from various regions, various suppliers, from small to large, and all types of growing methods as well. So it could be outdoor, indoor, greenhouse, protected ag, you name it. So the way that we look at it is we try to source locally first. We know that's going to give us the freshest product to the customer. It's what our customers want. It helps our support local communities as well. We also look at regionally after locally. And we actually, for the U.S. market, we source more than 2/3 of our produce from the United States. But we all know that we can't get everything in the U.S. We've got bananas and tropicals in Central America. We've got counter-seasonal like grapes and blueberries. And then, as I mentioned, we do have to have multiple regions just to be able to counteract all the weather patterns and climate change and all the things that we're experiencing today as well. So all of this kind of wrapped up, we call it kind of the resiliency of our supply chain. We just really need to be diversified.
Emery, let's go to the next.
All right, we have talked quite a bit about the importance of price, but I've also mentioned a few times it is never just about price. We've talked about that interaction between freshness and price, but there is also a lot happening in the world of and, where people look at price and nutrition and organic and convenience. So those are three quick topics that we're going to hit next. First of all, 1/3 of consumers say that they put a lot of effort into making sure that they eat healthfully. And that has a lot to do with consumers that have children at home. That's really the one big time that we tend to make a lot of changes as consumers in the way we approach food. Laura, you mentioned it, consumers see produce as being healthy. So to me, step one is into that health halo. Let's make sure that we say, hey, good food gives you a good feeling. It's dietitian recommended. Or we take step two and actually talk about features and benefits. This has vitamin C that's great for immunity, or this has zinc and that helps with immunity. All these different ways in which we can help consumers understand there is more than the overall health halo. Because here's the thing, better knowledge can boost engagement. If people understand what is one serving, maybe they would eat a little bit more of it. If they understand the very specific nutrient content and what that does for them, they might start to seek it out a little bit more. That knowledge is very strong among older generations, but it's not something that younger generations have picked up, and that is where social media can play a big role. Organic. For a couple of years, we saw organic a little bit down. Of course, that had everything to do with that pressure on income. This year, organic engagement grew again, with 6% saying they almost buy it exclusively if possible, and another 22% saying I buy a fair amount. Why is that? Well, they believe organic is fresher, there were sales promotions, it tastes better. So there is a different set of reasons, some emotional and some a benefit that they're seeing, maybe something is on sale and that is their opportunity to start engaging with the category. So that might be a great entry point for us there as well. But that added engagement that we saw over 24 resulted in a great year for organic produce. We're seeing dollars up 5.1%, reaching their highest level to $11.5 billion, and we're seeing strength in pound sale as well. And as you can see, the last couple of years, we had not really seen pound growth. So to see pounds pull up really means that people are focused on what they believe are the benefits of organic and voting with their wallet. What do they think that's going to look like over the next year? Well, 30% believe that they're going to buy more organic, and much of that is coming from that core organic consumer. But there is opportunity to grow organic among those light and medium consumers if we're able to educate and really talk about why one might buy organic produce. Last, value added. Let's look at that for a minute. So anything that had a further strap, whether it was a half diced, a salad kit, what have you, that was not doing great last year, but it's also starting to come back in terms of engagement. So we mentioned earlier all those additional home-cooked meals, but we don't have additional time, and that's where we're seeing people lean on value added a little bit more. The sales also looked great in value added. We continue to grow, though not a ton, about 1%. So that means conventional outgrew value added, even though there was some growth on the pound side. So this really tends to be an area where people go back and forth between doing the work themselves, buying those value added items, and as you'll see in a minute, starting to heavily rely on deli prepared for that value added produce as well. So what are we seeing in terms of value added? Well, aggressive growth in fruit, and that has everything to do with a more on-the-go lifestyle. Entertaining is back, whereas there is growth on the value added on the vegetable side, but not as much as fruit. So that is an opportunity for continued growth in 2025. Who are those consumers? Well, as you imagine, it is people that have a little bit more discretionary income. At the same time, it's also people that have extreme pressure on their time. Millennials who now have a lot of the millennial households now have children at home. They are employed full time. So it just makes it to where they are looking for solutions. So lean into that, into marketing and merchandising, just saying, yes, you pay a little bit more, but you're buying time and sanity much along with that value-added produce. There is an opportunity for those time-saving shortcuts in every day, but also in holidays. More and more we see consumers say, why is it that we spend 4 or 5 hours cooking Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner instead of spending time with our guests and our family? So we're seeing more of those value-added solutions come into holiday sets as well. And as I mentioned, there is big growth availability in produce in the deli department as well. Deli is one of the fastest growing departments around the store. And whether we look at those prepackaged salads in the deli department, or we're looking at baked potato sides, or coleslaw, or fries in the deli department, big growth as consumers continue to shift those dollars between retail and food service. So Rick, over to you to talk a little bit about this.
Yeah. Hey, Jim, there's a lot of focus, and Sweetgreen does a great job of focusing on health and nutrition. I'd be interested, is the emphasis on overall health halo of produce, or are you actually getting into specific functionality of the nutrients? You know, for example, like vitamin C or lysoprene.
It's a great question. I think the food is medicine type of approach, and nutrient content of the food is clearly showing up in what our customers are asking for. What slice of our demographic, it's very hard to tell. I do know on our sourcing side, what we try to buy is to find ways to bring nutrient awareness into our own frame of reference. While not a produce example, you can think about our beef business as a grass-fed, grass-finished beef in order to increase the nutrient content of the beef coming through versus feedlot. And we get a lot of credit for things like that from our consumers at the same time. And it's hard to say that it matters the same around the country either. I think when you look at higher level income demographics, I think people are more researched about nutrient quality in the foods that we eat. And in more rural parts of the country, I think they're thinking more about portions and volume and price and value. So we see a pretty wide range in terms of what people are asking for relative to this in our business.
Interesting. I would lean into, as you said, a little bit about the functionality. I think people have a general halo that produce is healthy for you. And I think they need to understand some of the functionality, so I agree with that. Hey, Josh, I want to shift it. Organic sales are growing again, driven by a core following. From your view, how is organic performing in food service? And what do you expect in the years to come?
So organic is in the food service space is still relatively very small, versus conventional. I think, order of magnitude, it's about 1% of the total volume that is sold in the food service space relative to conventional. But the good news is for anybody that's in the organic business is it's growing about 3 times faster than the conventional products. And I think, so clearly with that trend, the trends that Anne Marie talked about at retail, the fact I talked about Gen Z earlier, and how important, nutrition and plant-forward eating is to them. I think you're starting to see that shape a positive upward trend around organics.
I'm interested in at food service. We talked about convenience, the value added, where it's pre-prep. Josh, are you seeing the demand for pre-prep, or has that always been there and now it went over to retail? I'm kind of interested.
So value-added, pre-prepped product, further processed product, I'd say it's really taken off, particularly since the pandemic. When you think about operating a kitchen, labor has really become a focal point and a challenge for food service operators, whether it be the just having access to labor, the expense of it, as well as the just the skill level The skill level of people that you can hire in the kitchen is just not as good as it was, right? It's much more transient roles. And so anything that we can do to make that process easier in the kitchen, to open up a bag of pre-prepped product, make it easy to prep, simple to be executing the dish for the people that work in the kitchen, we're seeing significant growth in that area.
Makes sense. Anne-Marie, I want to make sure we get time for questions. So I had some follow-ups, but let's go ahead and go to the next section and see how we do.
All right, well, this is a short and final section, so sustainability. We've talked about that a lot over the last couple of years, and as we say, none of these issues stand alone. People believe if you take care of the planet, it's good for them. You take care of the animal, you take care of the community. It all is working together in that system. So you're seeing a lot of focus on that in signage, in packaging, and everywhere else. We talked earlier about the fact that there's different claims that go along with that idea of sustainability. Boomers are more interested in locally grown and grown in the USA, though overall those are extremely strong claims, so they have a lot of interest among younger consumers as well. And then we see organic and sustainably grown pop really, really big among Gen Z and millennials. So the where and the by whom is more important than the how. And this is an interesting discussion because oftentimes I get asked, should we put on the pack whether we are greenhouse grown or field grown? Well, this is really maybe a hierarchy to think about where people are really interested in where was it grown, by whom was it grown. You talked earlier about highlighting some of the farmers in the store on the package, and those are some big hints for us as the hierarchy of the messaging on packaging as well as the signage. Shoppers often align where they purchase with their values, so you're seeing those very organic kind of shoppers often go to the Sprouts and Whole Foodses and co-ops of this world that are very strong in that messaging. So if you are a traditional retailer, mass club, what have you, think about that as an importance of showing how you're sourcing and what these kinds of claims and labels and growing practices mean to you as a chain. A lot of consumers have been worried about waste and package waste from a social and environmentally friendly kind of angle. But over the last couple of years, as there's more pressure on finance, we're seeing that 55% of Americans say, I simply cannot afford to waste food. I saw this picture in Germany. I thought it was fantastic just to really humanize and put a label on not wasting anything. So no, they don't sell guinea pigs in the produce department, but what this is a tray where they put those leaves of cabbage that they take off, or maybe the green from carrots, everything that you would normally throw in the bin and take out back lays there, and people can bring it home for their beloved guinea pig or rabbit. So great idea there. Also, a lot of focus on limiting food waste. So rather than the markdown, Europe is experimenting with dynamic pricing that simply says today it costs this much, by this date it's 40% less, by this date it's 70% less, already indicating that they are working, and the whole slogan behind this, together we waste less. You're seeing things like that Belgian endive box that keeps the product dark so that it stays fresh and good looking for as long as possible. You're seeing a retailer say, we checked for your freshness, you're welcome at 1 o'clock today. So that is such an easy way to talk to consumers about making sure that the items are fresh and you have taken care of that yourself. So what is happening at home in terms of food waste? Well, 6 in 10 consumers say that they do occasionally have fruit and vegetables that go bad before they're able to eat them. That means there's a lot of interest in tips. Just simply tips on how do I refrigerate this? Do I put it in the pantry? Do I keep it in the dark? What is the best way to store them? Can I freeze them afterwards? Or maybe give me some tips on how to use them in different ways. You're seeing great signage and help in the stores about this as well. Simply talking to people what is in season is one way of doing it to make sure it has that peak freshness. Or ways to say, hey, if you have too much of this, here is some ways in which you can reduce food waste at home. Or that soup package there that I found in Germany. Normally we just say refrigerate or keep cool or whatever it is, but they put just tip right on there, and that's all it says, refrigerate, to keep it fresh as long as possible. So those are very easy ways, especially as that younger generation is starting to be a bigger and bigger part of spending. In terms of what is growing, we're continuing to see that packaged produce outgrows random weight, so those bulk displays where you buy as much or as little as you want. If we look at 2019 versus 24, you're seeing an almost 10% jump in the share of sales that are now packaged. Well, that comes with one problem, and that is that idea of package waste. So every year, the Power of Produce asks, you know, if it were up to you, where are you sitting on packaging? Is it just purely functional and you want to make sure the item lasts as long as possible and it's safe, or you want packaging to really focus on sustainability? And as you can see, it continues to be split really three ways, though there is a lot of understanding ever since the pandemic that functionality of packaging is extremely important. So you're seeing a lot of focus, especially in European countries, on that this packaging uses 70% less plastic, or this packaging is recyclable, or we have pulled 2 billion pieces of plastic out of the marketplace. If you're doing something with packaging, make sure you talk about it. A lot of you will tell me, well, we're not doing it just to get the credit. My point is, if there are so many consumers that care about this, it just is something, one extra little cherry on top for them to love you more. So it's not bragging, it is really giving consumers what they are looking for. A quick crystal ball before I kick it back over to Rick, the what ifs. We came up with a scenario and we said, you know, in a world where money is no issue whatsoever, what would you do? Well, 54% said I would buy more fruit, 53% I would buy what I'm in the mood for rather than following those sales promotions so much. People want to buy more veggies, etc. So in a world where money is no issue, and hopefully the economy will start to improve here soon, we are likely to see continued growth. At the same time, people told us that they would probably be dispersing their produce dollar across even more different places. So they're going to buy more at farmers markets. They're going to buy more at restaurants. So keep in mind that an improved economy will likely mean even more change for us in the industry. So Rick, I'm going to quickly put it on this slide so people are able to see the discount code here. You get a 40% discount on the total report with the code being POP 2025. And Rick, over to you for the final discussion.
So last question on sustainability, and then I want to do a speed round with you guys. I'll start with you, Laura. You know, the pandemic drove a lot of people to eating at home, which created an awareness of what they were throwing away. Inflation then added this pressure to them of, now that I'm throwing away, I spent a lot of money on it, right? What is Walmart doing in terms of ensuring freshness, and what other areas of sustainability are you focused on? Both from growers and consumers.
So from the waste, or trying to reduce waste and increase freshness perspective, we really look at the whole supply chain from end to end, and we're looking at quality at different points throughout that supply chain. We really focus on 3 T's, the time, temperature, and touches. So the temperature throughout the whole supply chain, and are we breaking any cold chain? Touches, we want to have the few amount of touches possible, and time, we want to get it through the quickest as possible. There's a 4th T that we're really focused on now, and it's not tariffs, but even though that's that's another one, but that's another conversation. But technology, and how do we utilize technology to help us through this as well too? And I talked about like precision forecasting is one piece of it, extended shelf life, varietal development, so those types of things we're really focused on. In terms of sustainability, there's 4 elements of our sustainability platform, and it's around climate, nature, waste, and people. So climate is all about trying to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, and we partner with our suppliers in that aspect. From a nature perspective, in produce specifically, we're looking at protecting the pollinator habitat, and we're actually asking all of our suppliers to have a certified IPM by the end of this year. In waste, besides the food waste aspect, it's also packaging. It's interesting that you brought up the packaging piece. We want to be able to, in our private brands, offer to reduce the amount of plastics, or at least have it recyclable and have more PCR. And then the last one was people, and that's really about supporting our communities and responsible recruitment processes. We've asked all of our suppliers to fly in the ethical charter, and now we're working on this ESIP program that's coming out of the ethical charter as well. So those would be the things in sustainability that we're really working on.
You guys are doing a lot around sustainability. Hey, Jim, as the Vice President of Sustainability, taking care of the planet and community is in the DNA of Sweet Green, right? Can you share more about how your goals are set, tracked, and more importantly, how are they communicated?
Great question. When you imagine our organization was founded by 3 separate founders, all bought into environmental sustainability in different ways. What shows up for us is a plant-forward menu that starts with a better greenhouse gas emission than most restaurant menus. So we had an advantage going into the discussion about Scope 3 emissions in our supply chain as a result of that work. We do an awful lot to think about that in the way that we source our food, and it is a difficult balance because of what people want to eat along with the impact of those products, animal being among them. So we look at it 3 ways: the greenhouse gas emissions of the choices that we make in the business and how we support both our upstream and downstream impacts of our service. Example, the bagasse bowls and lids that we use are the lowest impact that we could find. Largely compostable dining room, for example, for managing downstream. Then we think about better soils. What can we do to support regenerative and organic agriculture where we can, being local as much as we can for our stores across the country. And then, in addition to better soils, we think about animal welfare and finding ways to assure that the flocks and the herds are managed appropriately without antibiotics.
Hey, Josh, many retailers have set specific goals when it comes to food waste. What's happening in the world of food service? Are they setting goals?
I wouldn't say that they're sort of setting public goals, and I think that's really a function of food waste and the cost of food waste. The expense of it is such a core element of their profitability models running a restaurant. So it's really just a key part of what they're doing is they're always trying to reduce waste. Having said that, what we have seen an uptick in is the interest in our customers of understanding what we're doing to help promote sustainability. And there are really kind of 3 areas that they're interested in, and I would echo exactly what Jim and Laura have said, right? What are we doing to source products responsibly? What are we doing to promote climate consciousness? And then what are we doing to help reduce waste? And it's all the same elements that they talked about. They're kind of the levers that we're pulling to help meet their desires.
You guys have been great panelists. I want the crowd to get to know you a little differently, so I'm going to do a speed round. 1 or 2 word answers, okay? And Jim, I'll start with you. How will 2025 look?
Uncertain.
Or?
Uncertain.
Uncertain.
That's what my word was too, is uncertain. Volatile, maybe?
Uncertain, volatile.
Roller coaster?
Yeah. Well, that just fills me with hope, doesn't it? Okay, 1 or 2 words. Biggest challenge in 2025, Josh?
It's really the same. It's uncertainty, right? And 1 word, uncertainty.
Okay. Or?
Mine's more than 1 word, but staying on top of everything.
That is a challenge. Jim?
I think you can control what you can control. And you tackle it like that. We're going to have a lot of externalities. We'll figure them out. This is what the food business does.
I like that advice. Get the noise out of your head. Laura, biggest opportunity in 2025?
I'd say produce is center of the plate.
I love it. Jim?
Well, produce is the center of the plate.
And Josh?
I think just efficiency. right? And promoting freshness, right? Having speed of supply chain, speed to market, right? I think that's going to be the key.
Yeah, the pressure on efficiencies there. Okay, what's the best thing suppliers can do to help in 2025? Josh?
Stay focused on the customer. Continue to think about what does the customer need, because that's what we're here and really trying to do, is service the needs of the customer, staying on top of the trends, and to make sure that we're there meeting them where they need us to.
Laura?
I have two, and one of my bosses used to say this to us all the time. Bad news travels fast, and good news is always welcome.
Jim?
I think I would say communicate. It's relationships that matter.
All right. Do you have a favorite fruit or veg? And if you do, what is it? Jim?
At the moment, I want sweet corn.
Sweet corn. Laura?
Mangosteen.
Say it again.
Mangosteen.
Oh.
Love it. It's my favorite.
And Josh?
Well, I married into a family that runs a small family orchard, apple orchard, and so I'm going to say apple. And I had no idea that there are, 200 and some, if not more, varieties of apples. Most of them we never see, right? But love apples.
Okay, before we go to questions, last question, one or two words. It may be a few more words if you need to. What is the one thing you want our audience to walk away with? Josh?
Our success is your success, and your success is ours. Right? We need you every bit as much as you need us, and we do appreciate everything you do for us in supporting, serving our customers.
Laura?
We have tons of upside in this industry still, and to your point too, if we work together.
Great. Jim?
I'm just grateful for what everyone in this room does. We feed a lot of people.
That's great. What a great group of panelists. Wouldn't you agree? We ran a little bit long, but we could probably take one or two questions. I'll preface this by saying, don't even go towards tariffs. As we can see in the last 24 hours, there is no answer to it. So if there's any other questions that you have, we probably have time for one or two. We have one up here in the front.
So as we all know, everybody shops with their eyes, and 97% of produce is bought in stores. With the growth in e-com, street side delivery, like our online shopping and apps, other than training our teams to pick the best possible produce and to build that confidence with the online shopper, how do we get a larger chunk of produce bought on those apps?
Any of you want to?
I'll say a couple things. I mean, obviously, you mentioned one of them is the training, and we have to make sure that our online pickers are trained properly, and that's a hard one in itself because we have a lot of turnover in that area. But I would say there's other things that can help people shop online and get the right produce. There's educational that we can put online. There's the recipes so we can get them to shop better. It's having the ease of experience as well. So is it easy to actually find the item online and then get it all the way through checkout? So there's things that we're working on in the back end to make it a smoother transition as well.
Hey, Rick, I'd add, digital content, right? The quality of the pictures, the quality of descriptions, videos help tremendously to show people like how they can use it in action. Like you got to do is all you can to sort of translate the, real life experience of touching, feeling, and tasting into that digital world.
And I would say from FMI's perspective, the two areas we would say you focus on is how do you inspire and how do you help solve? Consumers are looking for solutions. So does your digital content help that?
That's a good idea.
I think we have time for one more question. Yeah? One more? Anyone? Bueller?
John.
Oh.
Thank you. Hi, so I saw that you guys touched a little bit on social media and how it can be positive for produce, but as someone who's in Gen Z, I've also seen a lot of people use their platforms to spread misinformation, people who aren't in the produce industry, they aren't in the retail or food service space. And they just explain their experiences or things that they see in the grocery store and restaurants, and they try to use that as a way to kind of scare people out of buying certain items, or maybe say, oh, this is actually bad for you. You thought it was good for you, but it's not. So I'm curious if there's any ways that you guys would suggest to combat that, whether it's signage in the stores, trying to educate people on certain produce items, or anything like that on menus as well. So.
Anyone want to? If not, I can. Okay, so I would tell you, I think one of the things that retailers, food service, the biggest thing you have is trust in your brand. That is the most important thing to a retailer, a food service establishment, any organization. You need customers to trust your brand. And I think we have to get away with, we think the science and the facts are going to convince people. I think the answer is in storytelling. You need to listen to consumers, you need to hear their concerns, and then you need to come back with them in a story way to explain what we would say is more of the truth. And I think that's really the way you address it. So great question, though. I love that. With that, Anne-Marie, any last comments from you? I love this discussion. I loved our panelists because it was a variety of different providers, so a lot of fun today.
Yeah, it was absolutely great. If you guys could throw that one last slide back up there so that everybody has an opportunity to get that code. Also, the emails to Rick and myself.
Yep.
So if you have any questions, I know we kind of shorted you on time there. Free to always reach out to Rick and myself. And Hill, do you have any
Just want to thank everyone for being here again. And I am sure you all enjoyed that just as much as I did. It was an amazing year. Rick and Anne-Marie do an amazing job, and the panelists, thank you. Thank you for your communication these past few weeks. You've all been wonderful to work with. We do have our luncheons about to begin at noon for the Good Seeds Mentor Program. That will be in Grand Ballroom 7A. For the Southern Roots Ladies Luncheon, that will be right next door in the Grand Ballroom 7B, rooms 1 through 3. And then we look forward to seeing everyone tonight at the gala at 7 o'clock in the Crystal Ballroom. Have a great afternoon. Thank you.